Hi, my name is John Weiss. I'm here to talk about a community project which has a business slant called the Bayview BOOM. So as soon as Ella's ready, next slide. One more. Okay, so this image might be familiar to some of the folks here. When I grew up, I had the opportunity to learn technology from adult mentors and role models, and I bet some of the folks here did as well, whether we're talking about software or hardware. In this case, this is hardware. Slide. Next slide. Okay, so unfortunately, some folks in our own city don't have access to those kinds of mentoring opportunities. Teenagers and kids in Bayview Hunters Point, which some of you may have heard of, has a long history going back to World War II and earlier. A lot of changes are happening in Bayview Hunters Point. A lot of money is going in there, new real estate, but there is still a population of folks who live in public housing projects whose parents worked for the Navy for 30 years from World War II and forward. Who, when the Navy Yard shut down in the 70s, putting thousands of families out of work, and the community still hasn't recovered from that scenario. Slide. Next. Okay, so when I started working in Bayview Hunters Point, I was teaching I was teaching recording studio skills at the YMCA in Bayview, and I was working with kids from the hood, and I was just amazed at the incredible talent and vibrancy and creativity and enthusiasm of these kids, and a lack of creative and healthy outlets. And that's one of the reasons that kids out there are getting involved in destructive activities. You've probably seen Bayview on the news in terms of the negative stories like shootings and so forth. But that really does not give a fair representation of that community. But when people are surrounded by negativity, then they develop a negative self-image. And so I created this project which is based on the idea that when you build something that's beautiful and powerful, it makes you feel beautiful and powerful. I'm sorry. Let's just go on from this one. Okay, so Father Boyle, who created Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, that's an organization that teaches folks, former gangbangers, to do baking, and they work in a cafe, and that's one of my inspirations for the project that I created. He said that nobody's ever met a hopeful kid who joined a gang. So my goals with my project was to create a sense of hope for these teenagers. So I developed a product, and the product is a boombox. And we're teaching teenagers in the neighborhood how to build this boombox, and we're going to sell it. So we're developing a business, but we're also a nonprofit 501c3 corporation. We're trying to raise the bar in terms of the kinds of tech projects that teenagers tend to be given by schools and other tech programs. By making it a product that we're going to sell, it can't just be this sort of makeshift thing that sits on your shelf and falls apart after a couple of weeks. It really has to have the aesthetics and the reliability that consumers expect. Our students are doing real fabrication, hardcore electronics, soldering, circuit building. This is an example of the amplifiers that our teenagers build. We have fathers and sons working together. This is out in the Double Rock, also known as the Alice Griffith Housing Projects. One of the experiences that I had growing up, and maybe some of you as well, is that I got to interact with my dad doing technology. And so we wanted to create the same kind of opportunity for kids in this community. We also have a very strong emphasis on involving girls. For those of you who might not be aware, there's a history of girls being discouraged from getting involved in engineering and technology. we have more than 50% of our apprentices are girls, and they love it. I mean, the boys as well as the girls love this program. They're incredibly enthusiastic about it. Teenagers love to build stuff. Slide. Next. 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 Okay. The project is really about building community, and we develop a lot of activities. Well, for one thing, some of our educational programming is right in the street, in the neighborhood. We're not participating in schools. We're not a back-to-school program or a college-bound program. Part of our philosophy is that a lot of the young people that we're working with are not likely to have an opportunity to go to college. So we wanted to give them an opportunity that enables them to build a life for themselves and an economic future for themselves, which is not dependent on a college degree and especially not dependent on going into debt in order to go to college. And we also participate in community activities, which I would consider. I studied I studied child development and psychology and education and public mental health. So that's the perspective that I'm coming from in this project. The idea is that various types of community rituals enable our participants to show off what they've built, and they develop a tremendous amount of pride in themselves as a result. And in an environment where these kids feel like, generally they feel like society looks down on them, this is a really important opportunity for them to develop an improved sense of self-esteem and self-worth. And it also brings together the community. Here we are participating. This is a car show put on by the 415 Car Club, and we were out there with our bicycles and boxes. Some of our achievements: we've proven that gangbangers will solder. We've had about 50 participants. We've got a waiting list of kids who are trying to participate in this program. We were featured on the front page of the Electronics Engineering Journal. And one of our students won the first prize at the EE Live Embedded Systems Conference in Silicon Valley. Slide. Okay, and I just wanted to mention a couple of things about why we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization rather than a profit company. Boom is pro-business. We teach entrepreneurship. We teach product design and product development. We're selling a product. However, we don't want to teach debt. Debt has a history, especially, fortunately, for the population that we're working with. Debt has, in this country perhaps especially, a history of being used as a mechanism to keep people down and to trap people in a state of permanent indebtedness. And our goal is to cultivate ingenuity and resourcefulness, that our teenagers can create value using the resources and materials that they have available to them. And we're not trying to teach debt or entrap them in a state of indebtedness. So we are bootstrapping this project, and we want to teach bootstrapping rather than indebtedness. Is there time for the 3-minute video? If not, then okay, great.